This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz. Very excited to be speaking with Sam Cutler-Kreutz about his Oscar-nominated short film. How are you, Sam?
I'm doing great. Thanks for your time.
Of course. To start off, can you say the title of your film for me? I want to make sure that I've been saying it properly.
Yeah, we call it A Lien.
So I'm curious about the spacing and what I'm sure is a very deliberate way of writing it.
Yeah, I think the title, it's funny, titles in general, for me and David, my brother and the co-director, co-writer of the film, um, they don't exactly come when you expect them to. It's not something we set out to make the title be that way. It just sort of, as during the process of the writing and making the film, the title sort of came, I think, unbidden from the ether, if you will. But something about the idea of a lien, the financial sort of like structure that exists, and the word alien, and those things kind of combined together, I think, and the separation of the two pieces of the title felt sort of, I don't know, emblematic of the whole film in certain ways.
I've definitely been saying A Lien, but then I heard it announced at the Oscar nominations, and I
I
was like,
know, I
hold
know.
on.
I wonder what they, well, yeah, if we win the Oscar, I wonder what they're going to say on stage. We'll see. I don't know. It's a surprise.
I also, I try to watch all the shortlisted films in this category, and it
Yeah.
happened that this was the first one I saw. And
Oh,
usually,
good.
if I was to generally summarize, often they're, foreign language and very miserable and depressing. And this one was not really foreign language, but was certainly very miserable and depressing, but also, I think, very important and current.
Yeah.
When did this idea come about? Obviously, we're at a certain point right now, but when did
Yeah.
this film first start?
Yeah, well, it's funny, it's funny when you're when you're an artist and you make a piece of art, you don't necessarily know, how it's going to be received or how we'll ever kind of like meet its moment. And I think this film, in a very depressing way and in sort of a wonderful way, is having its moment right now. And I think it's amazing when a piece of art finds its time to exist in. And I think that's what good art can do. It can, be a place to spark dialogue and create conversations. And this film is designed to do that. And I think it is sort of having its place for that right now, which is I think again scary and also great from the perspective of the art. The film came about. David and I read a New York Times article in 2018 about this process, and we're just once we read it, we're just immediately struck the by the cruelty, by the specificity, so many aspects of it. We're like, holy shit, this has to be a film. There's something in here, and I think one of the things that really struck us about it that made us push through and do tons and tons of research on our own and sort of get ourselves immersed in this world was, this sort of strange twisting of the rules, the kind of banality of it, the kind of paperwork and documents element of it, all that stuff felt specific to this particular story, but also so emblematic of the entire immigration process. And part of what makes, I think, the immigration process so hard and cruel in many ways is it's so that it's not one dramatic moment, but it's an everlasting waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and all these little bits and boops and the rules changing and I think it's yeah, that's what makes it sort of painful for people. And so this film kind of spoke to that, I think, in an important way.
That emphasis on documents also reminded me a lot of there's an episode of The Handmaid's Tale where, it's like
Mm.
a flashback to before things when they started getting bad, and they're basically people getting the last flight out to Canada, and there are people with ICE uniforms and people with ACLU uniforms like right next to each other, both there to
Yeah.
like make sure that things are happening right. And I think the idea of a process that's supposed to support you and a process that's supposed to sort of entrap you and make sure that you can't go through with that government mandated process
Yeah.
is unfortunately just too close together.
Yeah, and I think that's what the film in some ways, one of the pieces that it sort of pushes for is these I can hear myself by the way on your thing.
Looks good to me. I'm sorry if that's irritating, but I can hear everything okay
Okay,
on my
great.
side.
I think one of the things that makes the film sort of like unique in that respect is that these sides don't talk to each other all the time. USCIS and ICE are not the same body. They're connected, but they're not the same thing. And so you have these sort of horrible confluences of rules and law and different agencies bearing down on people who are just trying at their most basic level to go to the grocery store and like have a birthday and like braid their kids' hair. These very kind of specific human urges that we all have. And I think there's a broad brush that gets painted, but I think the film, I think, really speaks to the sort of like small humanity of it in some ways.
I know I've also heard in recent years about, the idea of legal immigration versus illegal immigration, and the fact that like Ellis Island times and other things, it wasn't such a clear cut thing. And now that, we are all sort of, people seem to be focused on the idea of, coming legally versus not coming legally, but there's actually quite a lot of burdens no matter how you do it.
Yeah, for sure. I think, immigration in general is it's easy, I think, to forget as people here, you know, just how close we all are to the immigration process. How if you look at most of us one generation back, two generations back, it's so easy to find in everybody someone who came to this country, and I think, and everyone comes with that same desire to just be a family, to live your life, to find a partner, to have a kid, to run a business. And so I think that again, this film, sort of speaks to that in some ways.
So are these people entirely fictional in this film, or is this based on, real specific cases?
Yeah. Again, the process is real, and a lot, and everything that's, the film obviously is fictional, and the people in it are fictional, the characters are fictional, but they're based on tons and tons of research, talking to, looking at court cases, talking to lawyers, talking to people about the process, doing a wide, like, swath of research to try and create the most realistic characters. And I think really engaging, we tried hard to engage Will and Victoria, our two incredible leads, into that process of research and really kind of like building characters for themselves that felt very, very deep, and, trying to come up with, again, we did, it's actually not in the film. We didn't end up editing it in, but there's a scene that we ended up that we shot that didn't make it, of actually of the interview, where they're truly like basically answering live questions that were not written down for them about their background as a duo, and so they knew their characters to that level of kind of depth. I think that partially what makes the film, I think, as realistic as it is.
I assume it was also a very emotional process just shooting this and sort of
Yeah.
stage it. Like, where did you shoot to make it feel so realistic?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was probably the trickiest part of the movie when at the beginning of the outset, we realized like, hey, we don't have a USCS building to shoot in. That's not like a thing we're going to be able to get at all. The film was made for, zero, almost no money, just super, super, super low budget. Everybody's working for free. So, we're trying to find creative solves. How do we like create this space that, number one, is impossible to film in, and number two is, you know, hard to even research in some ways, because what does it look like? How, what are the inner workings of this place look like? And so, we found this really, we ended up finding a combination of different places that sort of mixed together to make this space. But it was a community college as part of it, and some government buildings, like city buildings in various places that kind of connected. But it's that, I think, us as filmmakers are trying to tap into, the collective experience of being in these government spaces, that those long hallways, unmarked doors, the fluorescent lights, the cement floors and the metal railings. There's a certain kind of like 80s brutalist, architecture that exists in these spaces. I think we called it, between me and David, we call it the taupe labyrinth, is this sort of like maze that we sort of put together for the film. And I think it's, it serves to both act as a kind of claustrophobic space for the characters to kind of work their way through, and as a, something for the audience to grab onto.
And I know your brother David wasn't able to join us today, but I'm curious about
Yeah,
your working
sorry.
relationship as, brothers, filmmakers like this.
Yeah, I mean, David's amazing. Like, it's true, like being able to work with your best friend is like the best thing in the world. It's really like an incredible experience. And David and I have, very similar taste and sort of come up together, but also like we have different skill sets. I think that really helps make things work. We have, in some ways, they have complementing sets of skills. And so, we started off as kids. We grew up in a house with no TV. So we grew up as a pair of brothers, just like being in the backyard of our house, like telling stories, and really like doing a lot of reading and a lot of D&D. And so we sort of came up in this way of creating, and we ended up, our parents got like a little video camera back in the day, and we ended up making movies together. David was sort of the first actor, and I was behind the camera. But in the end, this idea of like telling stories from our own brain, not things we had seen on TV, was, I think, strangely, it's analogous to the process we are doing now, as professional directors, where we're, you know, building things out of our head and out of the sort of the cultural landscape to create, to bring to viewers.
And obviously this film is, powerful enough on its own, but is there an, next step advocacy kind of thing or educational program you'd recommend?
Yeah, of
Or is
course.
this unfortunately sort of out of our hands in a lot of ways because the government controls a lot of this.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think one of the things that that this film is one of the things that connects this film to the current moment, I think it is uncertainty. You know, the film is about uncertainty. I think we as the American people are in an uncertain place. You know, we don't know what is exactly going to happen. We're looking at the current administration, wondering what they're going to do. You know, and I think this film, if anything, you know, is sort of a push to say to everyone like, hey, you know, we get to make the country how we want it. It's our country, you know, and everyone has to have a voice and have a choice of how, you know, this like system can be created to our, I don't know, to our specifications in some ways, I think. And so, you know, obviously we've been partnering with the ACLU and a bunch of other places. But, you know, I think at its most basic level, you know, it's easy to look around and, you know, I think feel powerless, especially in the current climate. And I think it's that only feeds to, you know, let things like this continue to happen. You know, I think we are powerful as a country and we are powerful as a group of people. And I think, you know, if people want things to change, they can stand up and say it, you know, and I think this film is a sort of going to be a call to action to that in a way to kind of spark that conversation and say, hey, listen, like this really isn't out of our hands. It's in our hands. We have the ability to make the country as we see fit. It's our responsibility to do so, I think, as citizens.
Is this the end of this film in terms of this is a short and that's it, or is there a chance that this would become a feature someday?
It's a good question. You know, nothing can rule it out. You know, I think at the moment our focus is currently, I mean, obviously focus on this film right now, but our project focus is into future endeavors. I think we're working on some larger, longer pieces of future stuff like that. But this film may have a life in the future. Just currently, you know, we're not focused on its larger version.
And you're Oscar nominated, which is really great.
Listen,
Have you had a chance to see any of your fellow nominees? And is there something that you're very passionate about from among the other shorts?
gosh, I mean, it's funny. I've actually had the between film festivals and other places, I've actually had a chance to see about I've seen three of the no, I've seen four of the five actually, and they're all amazing. The shorts are incredible, and you know, I've been in contact with all five of us. Have been on, you know, like we're on like a text chat together, and you know, figuring things out as a group. I think one of the things that is so that has always struck me as such a wonderful thing about film festivals and then hear about the Oscars as well. This is my first time through it, but I don't know if it's happened in previous years, but it's just that community of filmmakers that, you know, each class, if you will, you know, is a group of people who get to come together and get to go to the festival or go to the Oscars together. And, you know, I'm excited, you know, we kind of got things, the group of filmmakers for this year, I think got things kind of like kicked off a little earlier than some, but yeah, I think, you know, the shorts are all amazing and I'm excited to kind of hang out with everybody at the Oscars.
Fantastic. Well, I wish you plenty of luck. Thank you for taking some
Yeah,
time to
thanks so much. I appreciate it.